commercial airliners. They flew them around the northeastern United States. They crashed one into each twin tower. And one into the Pentagon.
Smoke rising up out of what looked like a small pit.
One went down in a Pennsylvania field after a struggle with heroic passengers.
Huge explosion.
Super hot fires raged inside the towers, melting the steel supports, eventually causing them to collapse under their own weight.
Almost like a mushroom cloud explosion. And I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower.
And all of it was masterminded by a guy hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. The events of 9/11 were bizarre and unprecedented. Yet the government wasted no time telling us what happened,
The heat was so intense that the steel melted.
who did it,
Reputed Arab terrorist Osama bin Laden.
and what our response was going to be.
They were acts of war.
No steel-framed skyscrapers have ever completely collapsed from fire. On September 13th, just 48 hours after the event, Northwestern University structural engineer Zdeněk Bezant published his simple analysis. Simple. Bezant imagined the upper block of the tower powering down through the entire undamaged lower part of the tower in what became nicknamed the pile driver theory. That same day, September 13th, 2001, structural engineer Chris Wise also made it simple. He informed us that the fire reached 800 degrees Celsius, which melted the steel supports. The Twin Towers were among the largest and strongest structures ever built. They were a tube within a tube, 240 steel box columns around the perimeter, and a central core structure of 47 massive and cross-braced steel columns. Could plane crashes and fires really cause what we saw?
It was the heat. The flames there burned too long and too hot, rising above 1,500 degrees. It began to melt the steel.
The American people were in shock. Most accepted the simple explanations unquestioningly, but not everyone. On September 11th, explosives expert Van Romero said he thought explosives were planted in the towers. Curiously, a week later, Romero flip-flopped and said that fire did it. But could fire really do this?
It's hard to put it into words.
To some people, it looked an awful lot like a mushroom cloud. On October 21st, 2001, Jay McMichael posted, "Muslims suspend the laws of physics." I tried to be patriotic. I tried to believe, he says. McMichael points out that a jet fuel fire cannot possibly melt steel. A few weeks later, speaking at the UN, President Bush called for intolerance.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
Nevertheless, videos and websites claiming a 9/11 government conspiracy began to flourish. There were questions, painful questions, about the missing air defenses, demolitions, Building 7, multiple war games, and the airplane passenger lists. A few days after 9/11, CNN published the passenger lists from all 4 of the hijacked flights. No names of any of the 19 hijackers were on there. Larry Silverstein took out a 99-year lease on the Twin Towers just 6 weeks before 9/11, after it had been owned by the Port Authority for over 30 years. Speaking about Building 7 in a PBS documentary, Silverstein said,
I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
A put option is a financial instrument that goes up in value when the stock value goes down. Just a few days before 9/11, the volume of put options placed on United and American Airlines spiked to more than 30 times normal. And where was America's mighty air defense? When any commercial aircraft is off course or does not respond to air traffic control, it is standard procedure to intercept with scrambled Air Force fighter jets. F-16s can be airborne in 2 minutes. The 9/11 planes were flying all over the Northeast for an hour and a half. Was it just a coincidence that a number of military war games were taking place on 9/11, including simulated hijackings, planes crashing into buildings, and fake blips injected into radar screens? NORAD and the FAA were confused. Was it just a coincidence that a bioterror exercise called Tripod 2 was scheduled for the day after 9/11 on the pier right next to the World Trade Center, and that FEMA agents had already arrived the night before 9/11?
To be honest with you, we arrived on late Monday night and went into action on Tuesday morning.
Was it just a coincidence that on the day before 9/11, the Pentagon announced that it had misplaced
$2.3 trillion.
Was it just a coincidence that Flight 77 struck the Pentagon in an area that had recently had the outer walls renovated and that contained financial records, and not in the area where the top brass had their offices? Flight 77 allegedly made a death-defying spiral dive maneuver, then flew in at ground level, knocking over multiple light poles, yet somehow pilot Hani Hanjour maintained control despite the fact that he couldn't even fly a Cessna, and managed to destroy the aircraft so completely that not a single serial number part was ever recovered? Where are the engines? Where are the seats? Where's the luggage? Where are the passengers? Popular Mechanics magazine published an article and later a book promoting the official story.
Conspiracy theorists want to know why it wasn't the width of the full wingspan of the plane, and actually just the simple reason was that the wings came off.
I think what they expect is that if an airplane hits a building, it kind of punches a a cartoon-like hole in the building in the exact shape of the wings. The wings did not fully penetrate the facade. In fact, the wings had already been partially sheared off by the time the plane even hit the building.
Perhaps people expected a cartoon cutout at the Pentagon because earlier they'd been shown cartoon cutouts at the Twin Towers. And what about World Trade Center Building 7? A 47-story skyscraper that dropped straight down into its footprint at 5:20 p.m. on 9/11. It certainly wasn't hit by any airplane. And why was most of the steel from Ground Zero hurriedly shipped off to China before it could be studied?
We were able to move 120 dump trucks out of the city last night, which will give you a sense of the work that was done overnight.
Shit! Oh, shit! No!
A number of early researchers noticed the sheer speed of the tower destruction. An object dropped from the top of the towers would take 9.2 seconds to free fall to the ground, ignoring air resistance. With air resistance, free fall time could go above 12 seconds. Measuring the downward acceleration of Building 7, it is shown that the mass literally went into free fall, meaning the structure offered no resistance whatsoever. This is irrefutable proof of controlled demolition.
It's amazing. Amazing, incredible, pick your word.
The 9/11 Blimp website offered this graphic, asking which would hit the ground first. The top part of any skyscraper is the lightest and weakest part. They get progressively stronger and more massive as they go down. A growing number of people could not believe this was a gravity-driven collapse. In May 2002, FEMA released the first official government study on 9/11. The findings were packaged for mass media in the PBS Nova program, Why the Towers Fell.
As the steel began to soften and melt, the interior core columns began to give. Then you had this sequential failure that took place where it all pancaked one after the other.
If the floors pancaked, wouldn't the core structures be left standing? Quarter-mile-high monoliths of steel and concrete allegedly collapsed and fell down into a pile. This is what was actually left of the Twin Towers. Aman Zafar took this series of still photos from across the Hudson River. The building appears to systematically disintegrate into an expanding cloud of dust, a dust tsunami.